Parantaka Chola had 3 sons. Raja Aditya died in battle, so his second son Kandaraditya became king. On the death of Kandaraditya, his son Madurantakan is still a young child, so Kandaraditya's brother Arinjaya Chola ascends the throne. Arinjaya Chola died within a year of his accession. His son Parantaka Sundara Chola is coronated king. When the story starts, Sundara Chola is the king. He has 3 children, Kundavai, Aditya Karigalan, who is the crown prince, and Arulmozhi Varman. Other significant characters. Periya Paruvettarayar is the chancellor and treasurer of the Chola kingdom. Chinna Paruvettarayar is his brother. Aniruddha Brahmarayar is the prime minister. Alvar Kadiyan Nambi is a spy who works for the Prime Minister and Sembiyan Madevi. Sambhuvarayar is a chief, and his children are Kandamaran and Manimegalai. Veera Pandiyan is the Pandya king who is killed by Aditya Karigalan. Ravidasan and his group of assassins work against the Chola kingdom to avenge Veera Pandiyan's death. When the story starts, King Sundara Chola is sick and bedridden in Tanjavur. Aditya Karigalan, the crown prince and also the general of the northern command, lives in Kanchi. Arulmozhi Varman, the young prince, lives in Sri Lanka as he is the general of the southern command and is also sent there to settle political dispute. Kundavai Pirati, their sister, lives in the Chola royal household at Palayarai. Vandyatevan has been sent by the crown prince Aditya Karigalan to deliver a message to his father King Sundara Chola and his sister Kundavai, inviting them to Kanchi to see a new golden palace that he has built. On his travels to the Chola country, Vandyatevan stops at the Veeranam lake where there is a lot of hustle and bustle for the festival of Adi. Here, he hears of Periya Paruvettarayar, the chancellor and treasurer of the Chola kingdom. He hears that Periya Paruvettarayar has married a much younger woman called Nandini, even though he is in his 60s, and how he is so mesmerized by her beauty. He also meets Alvar Kadiyan Nambi here, a spy to the Prime Minister and Sembiyan Madevi. Vandyatevan halts at the Kadambur Sambhuvarayar's palace. He hides and overhears a midnight meeting that takes place here. All the chiefs and Periya Paruvettarayar are gathered for the meeting. He learns that there is a conspiracy and plan being hatched against King Sundara Chola and his sons, and how all those present at the meeting believe Madurantakan is the rightful heir to the kingdom. Vandyatevan reaches Tanjavur, after which he meets Nandini and obtains a ring with an insignia from her. With the help of this ring, he gets an audience with King Sundara Chola but is unable to deliver the message from Aditya Karigalan. Vandyatevan and Alvar Kadiyan Nambi meet on several occasions. Alvar Kadiyan Nambi tells Vandyatevan the story of Nandini. Also, through other conversations, we learn who Nandini is. Nandini's birth and origin are a mystery from the beginning. She was found on a beautiful countryside among a bed of flowers. She was brought home to Alvar Nambi's house, a priest house. They considered each other brother and sister. Nandini grew up among the royal children of the Palayarai until her youth. She and Kundavai never got along as Nandini thought that Kundavai treated her badly because Kundavai was jealous of Nandini's beauty. Nandini and Aditya Karigalan grow up as playmates and the two fall in love at around the age of 12. No one in the royal family and household like this. On the orders of Simbian Mahadevi, she is forced to flee Palayarai and live in the Pandya country. Aditya Karigalan never stopped loving her. Years pass and the Sevur war takes place. In this war, Aditya Karigalan defeats the Pandya troops. Veera Pandiyan, the Pandya king, goes into hiding. Aditya Karigalan and his men track him down to a hut. Karigalan enters the hut alone, asking his men to wait outside, and finds Nandini and Veera Pandiyan there. Nandini has been attending to his wounds while he lays on a bed. This enrages Karigalan even more, and he raises his sword to kill Veera Pandiyan. Nandini drops to her knees and begs for Veera Pandiyan's life, but Karigalan does not listen and slays his head. Karigalan walks out of the hut, carrying Veera Pandiyan's head, while everyone around the hut hears Nandini's loud and alarming cry. After a few days, Karigalan returns looking for Nandini, but the hut is burned down to the ground and all he sees are ashes. Nandini is nowhere to be found. After defeating the Pandyas, a coronation is held to title Karigalan the Crown Prince. This is where Karigalan sees Nandini in the crowd as Periya Paruvettarayar's wife. Nandini tries to hatch conspiracies in the Chola Empire. She helps a band of assassins from the Pandya country. Their leader is Ravidasan, the magician. Their intention is to destroy King Sundarachola's clan to avenge Veera Pandiyan's death. She also helps them with money. It is under her manipulation that Periya Paruvettarayar and the chiefs want to crown Madurantakan. Nandini also takes the responsibility of killing Aditya Karigalan. Vanati is the Kodumbalur princess. She and Kundavai are close friends. Kundavai has taken care of Vanati because she does not have parents. Vanati has always been in love with the young prince Arulmozhivarman. The prince, who normally ignored women, has shown concern towards her. In fact, just before leaving for Sri Lanka, he tells Kundavai to take care of her. After this, Kundavai intends to get Vanati married to her brother Arulmozhivarman. Kundavai and Vanati are at an astrologer who is telling them of the glorious future that awaits them. A worried Kundavai asks about the king's deteriorating health and the future of the kingdom, as Kundavai has also heard about some conspiracies. Just then, they are disturbed by Vandyatevan, who has come looking for Kundavai to pass on the message from her brother Aditya Karigalan. Kundavai and Vandyatevan fall in love at first sight, and Vandyatevan promises to be of any help. Kundavai asks Vandyatevan if he would deliver a scroll to her brother Arulmozhivarman in Sri Lanka. Vandyatevan accepts immediately. Meanwhile, Karigalan in Kanchi is confused as he has not heard any news from Vandyatevan. He tells another confidant, Pathibendra Pallavan, to go to Sri Lanka and bring Arulmozhi back. Pathibendran agrees. Vandyatevan is on his way to Sri Lanka. He meets Sendan Amudan, who tells him to seek help from the boat girl in Kodiyakkarai, Poongurali. She helps him reach Sri Lanka. Vandyatevan meets Arunmozhivarman in Anuradhapuram and gives him the scroll from Kundavai. They become inseparable friends from the beginning. During his stay in Sri Lanka, Vandyatevan learns some shocking facts. Before Sundara Chola became king, he spent some time in a cave near Sri Lanka. A deaf and dumb girl roamed the forests. Her name was Mandakini. She rescued him from an attacking bear. Sundara Chola fell in love with her and she with him, and for a brief period of time they lived together. But he had to return to the Chola country to fulfill his duty to the kingdom. It is her who saved a very young Arunmozhivarman from drowning in the Kaveri, and she disappeared immediately. That is why he is given the name Ponniyin Selvan, son of Kaveri. Mandakini has saved Arunmozhi's life in many instances. She somehow always seems around when he is in trouble. Arunmozhi also learns that she has once given birth to twins. He wishes to tell his father these details but has never had the chance to do so. Vandyatevan comes across this woman while he is in Sri Lanka and notices how she looks like a splitting image of Nandini. Pathibendran, who is sent by Karigalan, also reaches Sri Lanka to bring Arunmozhi back to Kanchi. Arunmozhi is now confused as if he should go to Palayare where his sister wants him or Kanchi where his brother wants him. While he is trying to decide, Poongurali brings some troubling news. Paruvettarayar's men on the command of Sundara Chola are here to arrest the prince and bring him to Tanjavur. Arunmozhi realizes that his father is bedridden and could have not given these orders. He realizes that Periya Paruvettarayar is trying to stop him from going to Kanchi or Palayare. But still he surrenders and asks Poongurali to show him the way to Tanjavur. The ship that Ponniyin Selvan sails on from Sri Lanka to Kodiyakkarai is hit by a cyclone and sinks. With Poongurali's help, Arunmozhi and Vandyatevan's lives are saved. Poongurali and her cousin Sendan Amudan row Arunmozhi to the Sudamani Viharam in Nagaipattinam. Kundavai and Vanati meet Arunmozhi near the Sudamani Viharam. Kundavai asks Arunmozhi to stay at the Viharam for his safety as she is worried about all the confusion and conspiracy taking place in the Chola kingdom, and also to regain his strength. Arunmozhi, who never says no to his sister, agrees to stay longer. Kundavai learns that Mandakini, who her father at one point lived with, is alive and somehow wants to bring her to her father Sundara Chola, as she knows her father has been disturbed with the memory of her. Mandakini, meanwhile, who knows her dearest Arunmozhi's ship was wrecked by a cyclone, comes nearer to him to ensure he is safe. She is then abducted by orders of the Prime Minister Aniruddha Brahmarayar, who has also heard about her. His efforts fail and she escapes. Mandakini, on her escape, follows Ravidasan, the magician, realizing danger towards the king, and ends up in Sundara Chola's palace. Sundara Chola, who thinks she's a ghost, throws a lamp at her and she disappears. Karigalan has received a scroll from Nandini, inviting him to the Kadambur palace to discuss succession. She and Periya Paruvettarayar arrive, but Periya Paruvettarayar has left to Tanjavur to bring Madurantakan. Vandyatevan tries to stop the prince from coming to the palace, as it could be dangerous for him, but the prince seems obsessed and is not willing to listen to anyone. Karigalan tries to tell Nandini that she might be his sister, but Nandini dismisses the idea. Meanwhile, Arulmozhi is still at the Sudamani Viharam awaiting orders from his sister Kundavai. The people of Nagaipattinam are enraged and worried that the Buddhists are trying to convert him into Buddhism. There is a commotion outside the Viharam of people who demand to see Arulmozhi, but a cyclone hits Nagaipattinam. Arulmozhi is safe in Annai Mangalam and he wishes to start relief work for all those affected by the cyclone. He learns about Mandakini's abduction by a fellow companion and is enraged by the news. He decides that he has to start acting and disguises himself as a trader. During his travel, he realizes that he may be in danger and could be surrounded by Pandya conspirators as he faces hurdles in all his plans. The crowd also realizes that he could be in danger and want to accompany him to Tanjavur. He learns that all the rivers in the Chola country are overflowing. He saves Poongurali and Vanati from the flooded Kaveri. Poongurali tells Arulmozhi that Mandakini does not wish to live any longer and would like to see him one time before she dies. Arulmozhi, Vanati and Poongurali rush to Tanjavur. Periya Paruvettarayar, who was travelling from Kadambur to Tanjavur to bring Madurantakan, also gets caught in the overflowing Kaveri. He manages to survive and overhears a conversation between the Pandya conspirators, Ravidasan the magician, and others. He hears them talking about their plans to assassinate the king Sundara Chola and both his sons, Karigalan and Arulmozhi. He also hears them discussing Nandini's role in the plot and is enraged and realizes how he has been manipulated by her all these days. He tries to confront Ravidasan but is overpowered by him. He manages to recover from the hit. He then accidentally meets Kundavai, who is travelling along the banks of the river, and tells her everything he knows and Nandini's role in it. He then proceeds to Kadambur where Nandini and Karigalan are. Kundavai tells Vanati all she has learnt from Periya Paruvettarayar. Vanati tells Arulmozhi and they continue their journey to Tanjavur. They do not want to reveal Arulmozhi's true identity, so they enter the palace grounds on Vanati's demand. All three of them enter the palace, Vanati, Poongurali and Arulmozhi. Chinna Paruvettarayar, who is guarding the palace grounds, looks at them with contempt. He learns about a hidden assassin and urges Vanati to go to the king's side. He then recognizes that The man with Vanati and Poongurali is Arulmozhivarman. Arulmozhi goes to meet his father. Poongurali stays back with Chinna Paruvettarayar to reason with him on why they entered the way they did, because he is suspicious. She and Chinna Paruvettarayar are talking when she hears a loud scream from inside the palace and rushes in. She sees a spear flying towards Mandakini, who has somehow ended up here again. But before Poongurali can reach her, the spear pierces Mandakini and she dies on the spot. During all this commotion in the palace, the assassin manages to escape. King Sundara Chola holds Mandakini's head in his lap and sobs. Arulmozhi tries to console him. Meanwhile, in Kadambur Sambhuvarayar's palace, Aditya Karigalan is growing violent and anxious by the hour. He has bad mood swings and taunts everyone around him. So much that he does not wish to even see his best friend Vandyatevan and asks him to get out of his sight. The conspiracy theory has been haunting him and he is suspicious of everyone around him. Vandyatevan is sent for by Nandini through Manimegalai, who is a confidant of Nandini. Nandini wishes to know the whereabouts of Periya Paruvettarayar. Vandyatevan enters into a secret passage that leads to Nandini's room. It is filled with stuffed animals. He discovers that he is not alone and that the Pandya conspirators are also there. He manages to outrun them when Nandini intervenes. She tells Manimegalai and Vandyatevan of her intentions with Karigalan. Nandini then asks Vandyatevan to leave, but he does not and tries to persuade her to give up the idea of assassinating the crown prince. Nandini urges him to leave, but he does not. Vandyatevan insists that she give him her sword. Nandini hands the sword over to him, but it slips and falls to the ground with a loud thud. Just then they hear footsteps approaching and realize it could be Aditya Karigalan. Nandini asks Vandyatevan and Manimegalai to hide. Vandyatevan hides in the musical instrument room attached to Nandini's room, and Manimegalai hides behind the curtains. Aditya Karigalan enters the room and sees the sword on the floor and looks around for Vandyatevan but cannot find him. He does, however, discover Manimegalai behind the curtains and sends her away. Both Nandini and Karigalan are emotional and their tempers rise. Nandini tells Karigalan how much she loved him and also denies that there could be any blood relation between them. Aditya Karigalan tells her how he regrets beheading Veerapandiyan despite her begging for his life. Nandini is very emotional and tells Karigalan how her entire life has been one mystery after another. Karigalan tries to convince Nandini that they do not need any of this and they could go somewhere alone and live happily. But Nandini says that is not possible, and she whispers her real father's name in his ears. Karigalan is shocked and he becomes very emotional. And Karigalan says, I cannot imagine the things that you have been through. Please forgive me. Vandyatevan grows restless as he can feel danger in the air now that the prince has become so emotional and wants to approach Karigalan even if it enrages him. He hears an emotional outburst from Karigalan and steps forward to help him when someone strangles him from behind. Before falling down, Vandyatevan sees a man entering Nandini's room with a sword and shouting at Nandini. He also sees Ravidasan approaching them. A ghastly wind blows and there is no light in the room. Aditya Karigalan is murdered. When Vandyatevan wakes up, he sees the corpse of Aditya Karigalan. He blames himself for not protecting the prince. Just then, the palace men enter the room and see Vandyatevan holding Karigalan's head on his lap and accuse him of murdering the crown prince. Vandyatevan is arrested for Aditya Karigalan's murder. The Paruvettarayars and chiefs are informed of Karigalan's death and they plan to crown Madurantakan. Vandyatevan manages to free himself and carries Karigalan's body to Malayaman, the prince's grandfather. They then take his body to the king to perform the last rites and to bring justice to Karigalan's murder. Nandini flees the palace. The Prime Minister Aniruddar comes to meet Sundara Cholar. King Sundara Cholar tells him, "My son Aditya Karigalan built a golden palace in Kanchi. Maybe if I had gone to visit him, he would still be alive." And he also says, "I plan to go there and live the rest of my life. But before that, we should crown Madurantakan." Aniruddar says, his mother Sembiyanmadevi will not agree to that. Sundara Cholar says, "You need to talk to her and convince her of the same." Aniruddar comes to Sembiyanmadevi and tells her of what the king's wishes are. Sembiyanmadevi asks Aniruddar, "There is a secret that only I and you know, and you still think that crowning Madurantakan is right?" Exactly then, Madurantakan enters the room. He asks his mother, "I heard rumors that you were against me being crowned, but now I have heard it with my own ears." Sembiyanmadevi tells him, "Your father wanted you to be a Shiva devotee and not a king. Hence, you cannot become king." Madurantakan is outraged and asks her what sort of a mother she is and whether he really is her son. Sembiyanmadevi says, "I can no longer keep the secret to myself. You really are not my son." Madurantakan is so shocked and asks her whose son he really is. Sembiyanmadevi tells a story. "After I got married, I could not bear a child. After so many years, I gave birth to a child. But that child was stillborn. At the same time, there was a mute lady who worked in the palace. Both her and her sister were mute. Her sister had twins. Out of the twins, I took one child and gave the other child to Alvar Nambi's family. I gave my stillborn baby to the mute lady and told her to bury the child and never tell anyone about this. 5 years after this happened, I visited the mute woman at her house and saw a boy aged around 5 there. I saw him now and then. Every time I saw the boy, I felt a warm feeling inside me. I knew he and I were connected. So I asked the mute lady who that boy was. She then let me know. The child I thought died did not die. The baby was alive and she had brought him up. I told your father all these details. Your father told me to leave our real child to be brought up by the mute lady and continue growing you up as our child. He then asked me to promise him that I would never let you rule the country and instead bring you up as a true Shiva devotee. That is why I say you cannot be crowned. Madurantakan is shocked and outraged, but he does not show it out. Three days after this, a royal meeting takes place. Everyone is present except Madurantakan. Sundara Chola asks where Madurantakan is, and Sembian Madevi says she has been looking for him as well, but cannot find him. Alvar Nambi enters at that moment and informs them that Madurantakan is on his way. Suddenly, Pungurali and Sendan Amudan enter the meeting. As soon as Sembian Madevi sees Sendan Amudan, she becomes very emotional and calls him son and runs to hug him. Sendan Amudan tells her he's been waiting all his life for this. Sembian Madevi asks him if he knew that she was his mother. He says he knew for a very long time but was waiting for her to call him son. Everyone watching this is shocked. Alvar Nambi then explains the truth to everyone. Kundavai and Arulmuri are so happy that Sendan Amudan is their uncle. At this time, Periya Paruvettarayar and Chinna Paruvettarayar enter the meeting and the Prime Minister Aniruddha Brahmarayar says, "We need to know what really happened to Aditya Karigalan. If Periya Paruvettarayar wishes, he can explain." Periya Paruvettarayar starts telling them what happened. Nandini was a Pandya conspirer and I did not know that all along. On the day of Aditya Karigalan's death, Nandini and Karigalan were talking when I entered the room. And since I just realized Nandini's real intentions, I threw a sword at her direction. But it fell on Karigalan by mistake. Everyone listens in shock. Periya Paruvettarayar continues. After that, a few people held me from behind and I lost consciousness. The next time I opened my eyes, I was lying on the foothills of a mountain and Nandini was with me. After that, my brother and a few of our men came looking for me. Realizing that my men were coming, Nandini ran away from the place. He then says, "There is no way I can compensate for the mistakes I have made," and lifts his sword and plunges it into his own stomach. Sundara Chola says, "I am sure you would have not made any mistakes on purpose. Why did you do this to yourself? Everyone lifts Periya Parvetarayar to administer to his bleeding body. While on his deathbed, Alvar Kadyanambi comes to visit him. He tells him that his sister Nandini says thank you. Periya Parvetarayar says, "Oh, does she still think of me?" and laughs. Periya Parvetarayar then tells him the truth, that it was not him who killed Aditya Karigalan, and that he admitted to doing so to remove the suspicion people had on Vandyatevan. He says, "If I did not say that I killed Aditya Karigalan, they would kill Vandyatevan." Kundavai and Arulmuri overhear this conversation. All the royals decide that Arulmuri should be crowned. But at the last minute, Arulmuri crowns Sendan Amudan. Sendan Amudan is then given the title Uttama Cholar. In history, Kundavai and Vandyatevan got married. Arulmuri Varman and Vanati got married. Their son was Rajendra Chola I. Uttama Cholar was succeeded by Arulmuri Varman, who came to be known as Rajaraja Chola I. After his death, his son Rajendra Chola I ruled.